We interrupt that story, take you live now to the Minister, Paul Fletcher. He's at the site of new Western Sydney Airport.
Who is a Senior Executive of Transgrid, and with Graham Millett, who is Executive General Manager, Airport Infrastructure at WSAco. And we're here to mark two important milestones for Western Sydney Airport, because this is really the day on which this land goes from being farmland to a construction site. This is the day that this land goes from being farmland to a construction site, so that WSAco can get on with the job of building Western Sydney Airport in time for it to be open and operational before the end of 2026. Over the last 3 and a bit years, since the federal government committed to proceed with a second Sydney Airport here at Badgerys Creek, we've done a huge amount of work. An airport plan put out in draft and then final form, an environmental impact statement, thousands of pages in draft and final form, and a lot of community consultation. We've had extensive consultation with Sydney Airport before it decided it would not be taking up its right of first refusal. The Turnbull government committed that we would invest $5.3 billion to get this airport built, and that we would establish WSAco, a government-owned company, to take on the job of building and owning the airport. WSAco is up and running, as you can see, with a chairman, a board, extensive executive staff now appointed. Its head office is in Liverpool, and it's hard at work on all of the procurement activities that will be necessary to let the very large construction contracts for this project to proceed and for the airport to be open and operational by late 2026. And today we are marking two important milestones in this land being transformed from farmland into an active construction site. Firstly, not far from here, the last remaining building on the site is going to be demolished. On this 1,780 hectare site, there were some 230 buildings. Those have gradually been falling vacant as leases have come to an end. They're all Commonwealth owned buildings. They've been coming vacant as leases have come to an end, and buildings have gradually been demolished. Today, the last building on the site will be demolished, and that's all part of the Commonwealth handing over to WSAco a construction site so it can get on and do what it needs to do. And there's one other very important thing that we need to do, where work is kicking off today as well. There's a high voltage transmission line which runs across the site. In fact, part of where it runs presently goes right across where the runway will be. So that high voltage transmission line needs to be put underground, and a substantial contract has been entered into between WSAco and Transgrid, which is the owner and operator of that high voltage transmission line. It's a close to $100 million project to move this 3.2 kilometres of high voltage transmission line underground. It needs to be put underground, and indeed the final route of the underground line will be a little bit longer than the 3.2 kilometres, so as to preserve the maximum operational flexibility for the airport site. And so today, physical work on that major project is getting underway, as well as I've mentioned, the demolition of the last building on the site. So today, a very important day as we progress towards Western Sydney Airport being open for business by late 2026. Today, this land is moving from being farmland to being a construction site, with a construction activity underway under the Transgrid contract, and the last existing building on the site being demolished. So a very important day. I'm going to ask Paul O'Sullivan to say a few words, and then if there are any technical questions, of course, we have our technical experts who can answer those. But I'll ask Paul to say a few words before time for your questions. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Minister, and welcome everybody. Obviously today is a very significant day. as work commences on shifting the transmission line here at Western Sydney Airport. The new Western Sydney International Airport delivers some very significant benefits to Sydney. First of all, here in Western Sydney, this $5 billion project will drive thousands of new jobs and strong economic growth in the Western Sydney area. Secondly,
That's where we'll leave that news conference. If you'd like to keep watching it, you can do so. It continues on our multi-view service. An update there on progress for the construction of the new Western Sydney Airport at Badgerys Creek, due to be ready for action and use by 2026.